My name's Sean Grapevine. I go to the Square. I've been going to the Square for about 6 years. So I was born in Decatur, Georgia, born to a great family. My mom and dad are incredible. I have an amazing older sister and lived in this like idyllic setting, end of a cul-de-sac, just like couldn't have been better. Had what should have been like the perfect childhood. But from a pretty early age, I just dealt with a lot of anxiety. I don't know if I would have called it that then. I wouldn't have called it anything. I just was trying to always not feel that way. It ended up being the thing that ruled my life. I was constantly just trying to feel better, but not really asking for any help or knowing how to. And I think the only thing that was missing from my life was like some sort of guide, like overarching moral compass, some sort of almost barriers and guidelines for this is how life works. This is why you should do what you should do. And as a result, I just felt like a little bit tossed to and fro in the wind. In high school, you just get more freedom, and I also got more anxious. I felt torn between who I was saying I was and who I actually was. I remember just wanting to be free. Like I wanted freedom. I wanted the answer. I was always seeking the answer. I remember reading On the Road by Jack Kerouac and all these hippie and beat authors, and their go-to solution was get in the car, drive across America, write the next great American novel, have the American experience, smoke a bunch of weed, and don't care about anything besides yourself. That felt right. That felt fun. When I was 15 or 16, I remember finally finding some guy who could sell me some weed and being like, excuse me, sir, you're 1 year older than me. I would like to purchase marijuana from you. Basically, I was an idiot. I didn't know what I was doing. And I remember going home and like standing in my bathroom, on my toilet, by myself, blowing like the smoke into the air circulator. For some reason, not thinking to myself, this is probably a bad start. I didn't like it as much as I wanted to like it. And all that told me was, it's not where you're getting your happiness from, it's that you don't have enough yet. I was just doing more and more drugs. I was more and more anxious. I wasn't confronting the problems of my life. Yeah, I was just miserable. And that's when I started working in restaurants. Okay, so let's back up for a second. When I was 15 or 16 years old, I remember going to youth group. This guy Nathaniel Hilliard. He was that guy in high school. He was the Christian dude who everybody loved, and like you just felt a natural attraction towards him. But I was like, this dude's cool. So we were buddies, and finally he got me to go to youth group, and I had a good time. It was meaningful. It was real. It was authentic. I had some serious spiritual moments there. I was like, Jesus, I don't know who you are, but I just want to give my life to you. And I think it was at that moment where I was like, saved. But it was like 3 weeks later when I really felt confronted by do I want to do youth group or do I want to like smoke weed and then have sex? And I chose smoking weed and having sex. Duh. So I went to youth group, and then I started going I was like, okay, I'm all in. And I was reading the Bible. I was like, man, this Jesus dude sounds legit. And I remember going to Sunday morning services and being like, whoa, this is not what the Bible feels like. Either I'm reading the Bible wrong or they're reading the Bible wrong, because there was a disconnect. They may believe in this, but like they don't seem any happier. And then I looked at the secular world and I was like, at the very least, they're having fun. And I love fun. So later on, I think maybe like there's a spiritual solution to my problems. I'd always looking for the spiritual solution. I tried it with Jesus. That didn't seem to have worked. And then I tried it with, like psychedelic mushrooms and acid, LSD and stuff like that. They gave me the taste of like, it seems like there's something that my heart is longing for. And it always seems like it's just around the corner. I just do a little more, do it more often. But what's crazy is that things didn't look bad. Actually, if you would have looked at my life, I would have seemed successful. I was just miserable. I remember spending $4,000 on drugs in 3 weeks. And then I didn't have any money. And then I didn't have any drugs. And then I was really hurting. And eventually, my girlfriend at the time convinced me to go to rehab. So went to rehab, which was here in Smyrna. And when I got done, the only thing I knew was the restaurant industry. And I just didn't want to be around drugs and alcohol. So I got a job at Rev Coffee Roasters. And it was the week that I moved into the halfway house in Smyrna. It was the same week that Phil and Emily, it turns out, moved into their house here in Smyrna. So I've been sober about a year, working at Rev Coffee. And during that year, I made friends with Phil and Emily, and man, I really love those people. And then maybe our second conversation, he was like, yeah, I'm a pastor. My wife and I moved here from Seattle as missionaries to plant a church. After about a year of sobriety, I really wasn't much happier. And I honestly, one day I came home from a shift at Rev and I was just like, I want something that I know people have. And I wrote down this list of the people who had in their lives what I wanted. There are certain people who live with a certain level of freedom. It's not that they're never sad. It's not that they're always happy. It's not that like they're invincible to pain. They have depth and meaning and abundance in their lives. And I just gotta figure out how to get that. And the one thing all those people had in common was Jesus. And so I was like, okay, that's enough for me. Well, also enough for me was the fact that the girl that I had just started dating, I pointed her towards the square. She started going and she liked it. So I was like, okay, me too. And so I decided to go to some church services. And after that, I kept on going to services in the basement, unfinished basement. I was like, this is punk rock. This is so cool. There's only 20 people. They're making it happen. Like, they live here. They do church here. I mean, these were people who were taking to heart the things that Jesus was saying and trying to be the way he was. As I mentioned, I started dating somebody who started going to swear at the same time I did. We probably had no business dating at all. Certainly, I had a lot to continue to work through. There were difficulties in that relationship that were just a result of spiritual and emotional immaturity on both our parts, but like a lot on my part. Over the next year or so, it was like honeymoon period with Jesus. I didn't really do much with my faith. I didn't understand that the key exchange, that intimacy is exchanged via sacrifice. That viewpoint ended up really hurting me. Despite some red flags and some advice to the contrary, we got married. There were things that I came out like the night before our wedding that I was lying about. And despite finding out about that, we got married anyway. We didn't rely on Jesus for anything. It was a disaster. There's no worse misery in the world than being saved and then doing the opposite of what God has for you. And I just remained stubborn and stiff-necked in that. At the end of all that, I relapsed. Our marriage certainly fell apart. So I went back to rehab, and it was there where I was sitting in the same waiting room I'd sat in 5 years prior. I was just praying, and I was like, Jesus, I thought you were supposed to... What's the point of you if this is the result? And the answer was swift and resounding and loving and stern. Jesus basically said, like, Sean, I'll save you as many times as you need, but you're gonna come closer to death each time. Relationships are about exchange, and if you want to be with me, you have to be with me. And he gave me this vision of Paul, and he said, I didn't set Paul free on the road to Damascus so that he could go and be comfortable in his church with the other apostles. Paul only maintained his freedom because he partnered with me, Jesus, in the gospel for his whole life. He built church after church after church. He pastored person after person after person, and his life was ruled by compassion. Just like with the list, I was like, all right, I will do that. If you say that is how we get to freedom, then let's go. Let's try it. And for whatever reason, the withdrawals that have been happening all week didn't happen that day. They brought me back to like the detox unit where they throw you when you're just like trying to like just recover or whatever. And I was back there like Mother Teresa. I was like laying hands on people, I was asking people how I could serve them. People kept asking me like, oh, do you work here or volunteer here? From that moment until now, I've just been like, okay, God, I'll serve your people. And it's there where Jesus was like, it's me and you together that are gonna do this. the next couple years, which is where we are now, there was the struggling through a marriage that was still disintegrating and a calling of ministry on my life. That calling was unshakable. And I was just like, I'm gonna do this. I was willing to do whatever it took. At every turn in my life, there were times where I met Jesus. He welcomed me into his arms. I asked him for things, and he gave them. And he asked me for things, and that fell on deaf ears. I was just like, nah, I don't think that sounds fair. You're God, and you have responsibilities to me. And I think I finally heard him. Like, no, relationship is about mutual responsibility.